Well, welcome. We're in the home stretch, right? This is the last panel conversation before the hour of networking on 3 fantastic days. And the crew and I that you're getting to meet here met last night for a brief moment. And the enthusiasm that these two businesses and 4 leaders have had for each other in just a 20-minute introduction has me very eager and excited about connecting you with them today. So without further ado, I would like to introduce you to our Business Case for Sustainability group. We have Herman Harris and Randicia Fletcher, owners of Harris Fletcher Enterprises, which include the Urban Forest Project and Living to Portraits. Welcome. And also with us, we have Arizona Wilderness Brewing Company, Jonathan. I'm going to say Buford, but I forgot to ask you. Yay, I got a head nod. Very good. And Patrick Ware with Arizona Wilderness Brewing Company. Before I have them introduce themselves further and tell us a little bit about who they are and how they landed in the roles that they play, I just wanted to tell you personally that I've been following Randicia and Herman for almost 3 weeks now on Instagram, and I've fallen in love with your family. And I've just, that's the cool thing about Instagram. We can kind of be that voyeur, I guess, in the best sense of a word, and watch and feel like I want to know these people. And I'm inspired and motivated by what they're doing. So thank you for sharing your life, your family, and your wisdom with that. And we'll get to hear about that in a minute. And I've known Arizona Wilderness Brewing Company for a while. I don't know John and Patrick until last night, but your restaurant, at least the one in Gilbert, haven't made it to the downtown one yet. You have been our go-to for years for anybody who comes to visit us from out of state. Like, where do we need to take them? Of course, Arizona Wilderness Company and Brewing Company, and the peanut butter and jelly jalapeno jelly burger is the bomb, right? I don't eat meat very often, but when I do, that's my go-to. And I've tried other places for that burger, but it's one of those, bite after bite, I just sit and savor it. So I wanted to give you my personal connection with both groups. And Herman and Rhodesia, if you would start with us first, please tell us who you are, uh, what you're doing in your life and in your business, how you're showing up, and how did you land here?
I'm gonna let my wife start off.
Good idea.
All right. My name is Randicia Fletcher. I'm originally from Los Angeles, California, born in Los Angeles. Initially, early on in life, started off with both parents who were addicted to crack cocaine, and which landed us on Skid Row. So I grew up on Skid Row with addicted parents, and the ramifications for children growing up in poverty, on the streets. There's a lot of instances of where children can be molested, abandoned, neglected, etc. So the spaces in which we live were not conducive for children. And there are still many people today who are still battling homelessness. So the tent cities that were present in Los Angeles then are the same tent cities that are there now. And also, I still have family members who are homeless today. And so I come to this displaced in life just to because my family is still in the community homeless, and there are other people who are homeless there as well.
My story, I'm from the opposite side of the country. I'm from Chester, Pennsylvania. It's a city located about 10 minutes from Philadelphia. And when I was younger, I had to witness my mother be a victim of domestic violence. And so because of that, we spent some time in shelters for battered women. We lost housing. Obviously we were concerned about food and things of that nature. And so that always stayed with me as I grew older. Once I purchased my first house, I always told myself I never wanted to sell it. I always wanted to utilize it for, women that were involved in the same things or went through the same things that my mother went through. And so that's essentially what we used it for. Being that I was also in the military, we also wanted to extend that to disabled veterans, homeless veterans. And then once I met my wife, it just extended further to literally anyone that needed some sort of help with housing or food or any way we could help. I wanted that house to be used for that. And then so now that brings us to starting a housing for, trying to create a space where people could afford a place to live, and then linking up with local first and going down. I know that's a question for later, so I'll save that part for later.
Sorry about that. Great introductions. Thank you, both of you. So Pat and John, I don't know who wants to go first, but help us understand who you guys are individually, professionally, and a little bit about your company.
Well, I guess I'll get started because I guess I did start the business in a garage once. And Herman, thank you for your service. And that story was, I read it on the internet, but it's a lot more impactful from your voices. My story starts in the Midwest of Ohio. Actually, Herman, I did live in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania at one point, not too far from you, but I eventually moved to Ohio, where the Midwest was clearly a farming area. I lived in the country, went to a small school. I wasn't a lot of financial means in my life. My dad was a pastor, and he grew up in LA and always talked about the West, and it was in my mind a lot. And then as I turned 18, I realized, I was going to Ohio State by partying there. I never really attended school there ever. And I just needed this change. And hindsight's interesting because I can tell you the West called me, as it calls many of us, and the mountains are calling and I must go, kind of thing. And as I drove out, I got to do something that I still get to refer to, is I get to see what it looks like as a first timer coming into the state of Arizona. Driving from St. Louis down on the 40 and getting to see the transition of the Midwest to the plains to the Rockies, and then getting to Arizona and having no idea what I was getting into. Calling my mom saying it was August, and I'm expecting what everyone does. It's this high intense heat, swallows everywhere, and I'm like, Mom, there are mountains and this is ridiculously different than I thought. And then driving down from Flagstaff to Phoenix and experiencing 115 degrees in my Chevy Nova with no AC. I like that story a lot. I tell that story because it helps me relate to why I started the brewery, which was to share that Arizona accepts people of all backgrounds. Everybody's accepted here, but it does need some love. And that first view of it was surprising. And I can speak from the Midwest point of view of, I remember what it looks like to not understand this place. And so when I started the brewery, we did do a Kickstarter campaign. We're the second brewery that do Kickstarter. And, I'm still humble when I watch the video. I refer to this story and I say, I want to connect farms and the agricultural community to the consumer and have our brewery be a liaison to that. And little did I know then what we'd get into and the amount of connections and farms and world travel, TV shows, all these things that we got to do. Here in that little video, I was being passionate and honest. So I did start that in 2012. We started in the garage, and really fully intended to again be a community liaison. You can call us a brewery, but we're many things and many different points of the day. In a restaurant, both locations are restaurants. But the truth is, at 150 employees now, Pat and I are leaders of a very big tribe, a very big family, and we have to make sure that the tribe knows what their point is every day. And that's different than it was in the beginning. So that's my background. And Pat, I'll lead into Pat. Everyone thinks we look like each other, but we're not brothers. We just happen to have a lot of facial hair, and the truth is, people thought I looked like Pat and he looked like me, and I would get the, hey, you look like that guy brewing in another brewery down the road, and he would get, you look like the guy doing Kickstarter, starting a brewery. And so I finally went in and met him, and he smiled at me, and I was like, love at first sight. And I talked to, I told my wife, like, I think this guy is going to be a great business partner, and I'll let him fill it in from here, because he saw me and thought something different the first time he met me, and eventually I did talk him into it.
Yeah, what did they call you back then? Beer Jesus?
Yeah. Never felt comfortable with that.
Yeah. Thanks, John. Nice background, by the way. John failed to mention he's a landscape photographer, and that's one of his photos. It is actually the first photo we've used on a distribution truck. We've recently went into wholesale for the first time ever, which is a big step for us. Little background on me. I grew up here, so I'm an Arizona native. Grew up in Ahwatukee, and I think I had a typical Arizona Phoenix upbringing. So, you know, if you think about how much it's changed here, I was definitely a product of urban sprawl and some of the suburb cliches, if you will. So going to high school here and then going to ASU, I probably lived in that space of ignorance to some of the diversity that is here, and specifically the natural diversity that John enlightened me about, more so than just drinking beer on the Salt River, which most of us end up doing as our outdoor activity. So, you know, I went to ASU and I learned homebrewing ultimately, and how to drink beer, which was, you know, the main focus for me. I don't think education, it didn't really dawn on me that adult education was something that you know, you could really engage in and change the world with, until I met a professor, the late great David Kahns. And so he was a Renaissance man who essentially adopted some of the principles that I was using in the homebrewing techniques, and created a unit at ASU that was centered around the history, technology, and science of beer, which then led into an internship for me to work at a string of local breweries. And then that was the point in which John and I met. So I was brewing at a local brewery, doing the overnight night shift, working the 16-hour days, and he had a dream and a passion, and I rejected that notion due to the fact that he had a head of steam, and he was trying to raise money, and so it came off you know, a little arrogant to the humble brewer in the background who was sweating over the kettle. But when I finally opened up to him and allowed that energy in, I was able to try his beer and learn his methodologies and why he was doing it. And he won me over, and I said, you know what? I got nothing to lose. Let's see how this works. So I ended up selling my car, living on his couch for a while, trying to figure it out as we were pretty much bankrupt to get the business going. But that's a kind of normal shoestring budget stuff that businesses start and launch. So humble beginnings, but we're pretty fortunate to be able to be on this conference and talk with all of you about bigger change. So
Great introductions. When we met briefly last night, we were anxious and wanting to learn about each other, right? I already had the insight because I get to facilitate, and I said, hold off, don't get to know each other yet. Let's wait for tomorrow where everybody can watch that happen. And it was neat because we left saying, we know we need to take a field trip down to Tucson to visit Rendicia and Herman, and just that love that already started to flow. Kimber spoke about that the first day, and I know not all of our speakers have had the benefit of being here all 3 days, but Kimber was talking about how sustainability and inclusion and all the things we've talked about for 3 days now, it's our responsibility. And Arnhem, in one of the previous sessions today, also talked about cooperation and collaboration. And that's what I'm hearing all of you speak to, you know, these humble beginnings and this desire to make a difference in the world, not only for yourselves and your family and your employees and your stakeholders, but to leave a legacy and a mark. So with that in mind, the next question I have for you is, what sustainability initiatives are you a champion for, and how are you out there in the world serving that purpose? If I go back to Rendicia and Herman first, please, then we'll go back to the guys.
So the sustainability initiatives we're doing so far is we're tree planting in the desert. One of the main things is that we're creating a food forest. So the clients that we have living on the property can reduce their carbon footprint by eating natural fruits and vegetables where they know what's in it right there on the property, so they don't have to travel to the grocery store. So they're saving on their energy bills and saving money, putting money in their pockets. And the trees over there are providing a tree canopy in order to reduce the heat island effect. We're also creating green walls, just green spaces, putting some chickens over there. So we're literally doing an urban forest, a food forest, so people can go and eat there, live there, play there, and just be able to celebrate right there where they are.
Yeah, and in addition to that, once we start adding additional property to that, we're looking at using sustainable material that's going to be the most energy efficient as well. and I think one of the things that we were listening to the news this morning, and it sort of shifted my perspective a little bit. It was a lady, I don't know who she was, but she was talking about when we get into an initiative like this, we feel like we're fighting against nature or we have to battle it. And she was like, no, the perspective should be that we're helping nurture it. We're trying to heal it back and bring it back to health. And so I thought that was an interesting perspective. And so it just makes this whole thing that we're doing all the more important, all the more worthwhile. And it makes you want to, I think like Patrick said, John had a full head of steam. He's going full force. It makes you want to continue to go in that direction.
So nurturing the land and nurturing the people who live on the land there.
How about from our guys here?
Yeah, and I appreciate getting to know these two, because you can just I always view we went and visited Ramona Farms yesterday. She's one of our favorite farmers, and I just believe that people should be judged more by what they do with their hands and what they do with their mouth. Just doing is so much different than talking. I'll give you a little background on kind of how we became. You get the idea of the dream, but how we became the actual sustainable business that we're. I don't want to call us where no one should say they're at the goal. You're never going to hit your goal, but you can hit versions of your goal. And right now we have some programs that I find to be very important. And that's kind of what I would suggest to other businesses is you can throw spaghetti against the wall and hope it sticks. But the truth is, when you find programs that you can build upon, that's the number one key to our success. And our big, large, expansive program started, and it's a malt company based in Camp Verde that malts barley that farms grow right along the Verde River. And those farms historically grew cotton or alfalfa, much higher water use, and the river literally was drying up. So I'll give you a little background on that, how we got there, and part of meeting the Nature Conservancy. Her name is Kim Schoenig. Kim runs the Nature Conservancy in the Verde Valley. Part of how she found who we were was Patrick and I, we do hire people to be able to run the operations of the company. Now, don't get me wrong, we've been in operations out of the 8 years. We have been in a lot. Pat's brewed a lot of beer, and we've done some things in the restaurant together. But over time, we learned that having representation working in the operations allows us to go meet people like Kim Schoenig of the Nature Conservancy and get out there and travel and get our word out there. But Kim noticed early on that we had an authentic vibe. She sensed that they're putting their money where their mouth is. We were the first buyer of Sonoran white wheat, which is our heirloom grain. Father Kino brought it here in the 1500s, and we put it in a saison, which is a beer that would represent that well. And so she heard about that and said, interesting, this brewery is interested in talking about these things and kind of going against the grain, if you will. And she gave us a list of, hey, here are things that the Verde River could sustain a little better. And we went down this list what the farmers could grow. And lo and behold, watermelon was on this list. And we're thinking, watermelon? And I won't get into it now because it takes a while, but watermelon has a big history here. The Spaniards brought it over, and it actually started in Arizona. The American watermelon growth would have started here in this area. And we said, okay, why? And long story short, the drip head irrigation makes it so you can monitor how much water flow. And the other side, alfalfa, cotton, and corn, is flood irrigation. You can't monitor it, and it goes right in drought season. Watermelon is going to be about right now. So we said yes to that. And now we have a very successful beer that comes out every year. It's our watermelon goes, and people love it. The farmers love it. The farmers' kids goes out and picks, and they delivers 15 to 20,000 pounds of watermelon. So as that continued, Kim said, hey, look on that list again. And we went down that list, and barley happened to be on there. Now, when you're talking beer, you're talking barley, water, and yeast, and hops. And so to hit one of those major fours was impressive. And we just said, I just don't understand how barley could possibly be on this list. And she said, well, it's approved through the Nature Conservancy, and we wanted to grow it, but you have to malt it, meaning you have to make it so it's usable. Brewers and bakers can't use just malt out of the ground. It would have to go through the malting process to expose those sugars. And a malting facility could be $5 million, minimum, right? And so not only is the farmer committing to this barley, but you can't use this barley at the end. It just seemed complicated. Then a man named Chip Norton, who happens to love the Verde River, said, I want to start a benefit corporation that would allow farmers to grow our barley, and we'll malt it and sell it to brewers. And so they asked us to be the first brewer to join that group, kind of sit on the board, if you will, and guide it. And fast forward a few years, we save about 125 million gallons a year. Snoggle Malt does, and our brewery is the number one buyer, and we're at about 80 to 90 million gallons per year offset. Between two locations, we use about 5 to 7 million gallons per year. So the offsets, very, very, impactful.
A fun stat there is if you drink a pint of our beer, it's roughly like 50 gallons of water that goes back into the Verde River. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, and those stats are coming from the Nature Conservancy, and they've been such a big help. But those are, that's the biggest initiative, and I really recommend to other companies, not just breweries, but other companies, to find initiatives that you can build a web off of, your whiteboard in your office. We were running at too many things. I'll admit it. Every single shiny object in the conservation world, we ran at it and said, let's do this. Let's make all of our retail sustainable. Let's make all of our meals sustainable. And we burned a lot of people out. So Snoggle Malt's our number one initiative. And then we do have a few more.
I think the key, John, is taking the biggest impact. So we did a little bit of an introspective dive into our company and went up our supply chains and tried to understand what is the greater impact of what we sell, what items are those, and how could we potentially tackle those in a sustainable manner that lowered the impact of each of those source items. And the biggest two items on that list were malted barley for beer. That's the core of brewing is using this barley, so a couple 100,000 pounds per year. And then the second is our grass-raised beef, which we get from the Bradshaw Mountains, Arizona Grass-Raised Beef Company. And so we started to look at our business model and recognize that, CAFO-driven conventional cattle raising was not going to be sustainable for the future. So we had looked locally and had worked with some small suppliers, but really the journey to overchanging to 100% local beef and 100% local barley was dramatic. I mean, it changed our business and our margins quite a bit. And it was quite a struggle for us to negotiate those with these local purveyors, get a relationship that is sustaining their farm and also not buying into some of the food systems claims about something that's labeled Arizona grown. And if something's labeled Arizona grown, we learned in the beef industry, that only means that it has to be taken here. It doesn't mean that it's an Arizona driven, cattle. They don't have to be here. They could be old dairy cows from California. So this was a swim up the supply chain that we learned a lot along the way, and we really did have to question what was going on in the system to get to this point. But I think, I was listening to the panel before, and there was some focus on, hey, there's going to be a minimal cost to the consumer associated with these products. And it might be, we did a simple poll before we made the grain switch. Hey, would you be willing to pay an extra 25, 50 cents per pint of beer if you knew that it was going to save one of the only wild scenic rivers in the state? And, majority of people said, absolutely, I would certainly want to do that. And similarly with the grass-raised beef. So that's something where education and having those discussions, and John being such a really great voice in storytelling has helped us deliver that message to people and have them understand where the value is going. But those are the two major things that we've done.
We could have 3 days with just the four of you, but we don't. We only have about 15 minutes left, and I know I overloaded all of us with questions, but there's a couple that I really want to get at. And let's go back to Herman and Rendicia with this one first, and then we'll circle back to Arizona Wilderness. Uh, how are you marketing what you're doing in order to educate and grow an awareness of the issues that you're looking to shape and move the needle on the dial?
Well, first of all, we're marketing through word of mouth, and that keeps costs down, and that's important. And so another way we're marketing is through invitations from the media. So as people invite us to come and speak, we definitely get out there and we speak. So we've done the Little Local First documentary. We've been on Life Along the Streetcar. Uh, also, what else? I can't think of right now. Some other things as well. So some as people invite us, we're there. And then as we continue to share with friends and family, inner circle, but just word of mouth. That's been our big champion for getting the word out.
Yeah, I think one of the most impactful things is you understand that the time that we're in with COVID-19 and restrictions, but we do welcome people to come and see the spot, and I think that changes a lot of minds, especially when they see our plans, and then when you're on the physical location that we're developing now, you can really see, oh yes, this, you can really see how it's going to come together. You can see the stuff that's growing there. You can talk to the individuals that live there that are helping nurture those plants and how it affects their life. Even one gentleman, you can even see how nature is coming to him. He's allowed to feed the birds and they like the plants, and it's just a total different environment, and you can look in a 360 direction and nothing around that one spot looks like it. And so you can, once you're there, you can not only see it, but you can feel the effect of what's going on right there. And then you get excited about, okay, what's to come.
And then nature will tell somebody else.
Right.
Like, man, what we saw. Yeah.
Real quick, if our listeners and viewers have not had a chance to see the documentary with Local First, and then the streetcar was the other one you referred to. I've watched both of them, and they're a great way to get really ingrained in and introduced to what you're doing, and be watching it through the lens of how can I help? What could I be doing? So thank you for referring to that. How about for Pat and John? What are you guys doing to help educate and build this community? You spoke about community, right? But how do you educate, and how does the marketing play into that as well?
Well, I can tell you right now, Arizona Village will be making a trip to Tucson to visit these two. And that's one of the things that we like to do is I believe your story should be transparent, should be known. If it's shut off and it's contrived down to one simple answer or one simple message, you're going to look antiquated. Right now we're talking, people are, they're everyone's kind of coming together right now and sharing their stories. And I think there's a lot of positivity going on in the world right now, as well as the negative. But the positive part is interesting. You go down and you meet these two and you say, look, our company and our fans, look at what they're doing. And if your company trusts you as the owner or the, a manager, if you will, that's the key, is developing the relationship. So when we go down and visit them, our fans go, I want to know more about them, and vice versa. And so we have done a lot of collaborations. We have done a lot of working with farmers, other brewers, other companies. Down in Tucson, we've been there many times working with very unique people. Tucson's full of unique people. We love going down there for that reason. And that helps establish the idea that we're not in four walls. There's two locations, but wilderness, there's so much of it in the state. We actually have 90 wilderness areas, 4.5 million acres. And then I can get into that topic of, I also believe that, with my landscape photography right now, I am writing a book on all 90 wilderness areas. That was my reaction to COVID. I think wilderness was the secret that COVID was couldn't get into. And to me, it's also sharing the idea that the outdoors of Arizona is its special feature. It's not Phoenix. It's not downtown. We love downtown. That's why we chose it as our second location. But it's the fact that there's an ecosystem here, unlike any other in the world. The Midwest is all one giant ecosystem. The plains are all one giant ecosystem. But Arizona in itself has a subset of ecosystems that are unlike anything in the world. And I want to be a company that markets the idea that being in Arizona does mean, to look past the the comfort zone, to look past that. And so we do try to share that in our marketing. We tend to, our marketing team now is 5 people, and we tend to get passion in that group. We never quell creativity. We try to have ideas be a pot full at all times. And then now the number one thing in year 8 for us is execution of those ideas. Marketing is very tough because of the ideas. They can almost overwhelm you. You can feel like you're drowning, but now we have to do the idea. So you don't bring an idea to the table unless it can be done. And this all plays into getting into our 4 walls. We do like to celebrate our employees. We have a diverse staff, and we're building that diverse staff. We are attempting this year to become a B Corp, and the B Corp mantra has added DEI, and DEI, if you don't know, that is diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so we're making sure that we're not what the 2 owners look like. We're not a specific creed, if you will. We think Arizona wilderness will benefit if the whole state of Arizona and anyone in the world can identify with it. And that's part of our marketing program as well. Sometimes you're subtly making changes, sometimes you're making the biggest splash possible. But right now, I think we're making so many little subtle changes at wilderness that the big splash is happening. And those are just some of the marketing things that we do. Obviously, you get that we're passionate about the state of Arizona, but it's hard to tell. 99% of my job is telling the story, 1% is making it. And it's a story that is so dense. It's biting into the most dense piece of bread, and you got to chew. And we're trying to break it down in marketing that's making sense, because really the truth is our transaction is you're buying beer and burgers from Wilderness. And so we're trying to break our marketing down into less about this massive story, into you're coming in and saving water, and you're coming in and supporting farms, and you're supporting this diverse group of people that work for us. And so we're trying to do that more with our marketing right now.
Excellent. Pat, are you okay if I go to the next question?
Go ahead.
All right. So tell us about any misconceptions that you've had to clean up about what you're up to, or even misconceptions that you're aware of that you are collectively helping to change just around sustainable living and really the condition of our earth right now. So I'll just open it up to anybody, and we'll go round robin.
And one of the things, the misconception is that people of color aren't working towards climate change, or that we don't have a role in it. Another thing is we get is that we as people of color may be prioritizing the wrong issue. Instead of we're focusing on environment rather than like other social issues, like police brutality, which are all equally important, and they all lend into one another. But it's almost like, oh, you guys are, oh, okay. It's like man, you guys are doing something, but oh, they really don't understand what we're doing, and y'all could be doing something else with your lives.
Yeah, and I'll tell you this. I'll give you a personal perspective, because I willingly admit I'm new to the whole sustainable deal. I'm from John knows I'm a city boy. I wasn't all about this sustainable, none of that. And so I thought it was going to be a huge lifestyle change. I thought I was going to have to change the whole way I live. And that's really not the case. It's really about doing a whole lot of little things in order for it to make a big splash. And so I know people, there are examples about how if you drop a pebble in the water, it ripples. But if you drop a whole lot of pebbles, then it affects more area. And so to me, that's how sustainability is. It's just a pebble here, a pebble there, a pebble there. And then you can, over time, see the effect of the sustainable efforts that you're doing. But I also think that works against itself, because I think we're in a society where people want to see results right now. And if you're in the sustainable game, that is not going to happen unless you have a ton of money. And even then, you still may not get results right now. So that was one of the biggest ones for me, is I thought I was going to have to live a whole different lifestyle, but that's just not the case.
Pat and John, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to weigh in on one that I think is a little bit of an issue, and that's recycling. I think there's some misconceptions on recycling, and ultimately the best way to recycle is to not purchase the plastic to begin with, right? So single-use items should go away. One thing that we focused on instead of focusing on recycling, knowing that recycling was a construct that was created by the plastics industry in the 70s, is composting. So everything that we don't have any recycling, or we have recycling, but we don't have any landfill waste at our locations. So every piece of plateware, anything that we use in our restaurant goes to compost at Recycled City, and that's about 300,000 pounds of waste, that would, and that's turning into viable soil that's being used at farms, and that's where carbon sequestration, I mean, our land, our soil is something to really focus on. I think it's a little underappreciated in this topic. So that's one that's really, really big for us. And I think recycling is good, but a lot of that plastic that you put in there doesn't get recycled. In fact, some of it, you may throw it in there, and there's a term out there that we like to use called wish cycling, where you put something in there that's plastic, but what number is it? Because there's only a few numbers that actually get recycled. And so that's something that we've tried to overturn that a little bit.
Thank you. John, are you cool if I move on?
Yeah.
Okay. We've only got a few minutes left, and I want to make sure there's just a couple of other questions that we all anticipated bringing to you as the listeners and participants, and I want to make sure we get there. Local First Arizona, of course, we have them to thank for this great opportunity for you to be on here and share your stories and get to meet each other, right? Enough enthusiasm and love for what you're doing to say, hey, let's keep this connection going. I've been privileged to host the networking for all 3 days, and that same synergy is there. I already have emails from people I've connected with, and that's really what we're doing to further all of these important issues and topics. So if you would briefly tell us, what is your connection with Local First Arizona? Why has it been important to you? And let's have a brief conversation about that.
I remember when Kimber came into Wilderness, probably 2014, if I had to guess, and they had to pry us apart. People that were around her and me were like, "You guys shouldn't be in a room together for too long," because I think I'm one of those people that meets some of her passion. I don't think anyone could meet all of it. And we established right away that there are just people on fire in this valley who want to see change, but there's no centralized force. There really wasn't. To even have Rendeja and her, Herman to meet them, this wouldn't have happened without Local First. And so I always appreciated the centralized force. I know it did start to help find farmers, and we've had hard times finding farmers for our restaurant, and Local First has helped that. But still, just the centralized force, the idea that there's a communication platform for everyone to find out who else is on fire, who else cares about. We know the fakes. I'll tell you that after 8 years, I know the people who aren't real. Something Herman said that triggers me as he's being authentic is, you think you're going to have to do a lot to change, but the truth is you just got to go and live and the proverbial mirror is not there. There's no one, society's not looking at you differently saying, are you one of those tree huggers? And you can see authentic people. And I think Local First has helped me a lot with that, finding that centralized voice and seeing who's authentic, who's putting their money where their mouth is. Because I don't want to work with you if you're trying to just get quote unquote local, or you're trying to get more green. I want to work with you if your hands are in the ground, and you're doing things. So that's what it's helped me with.
Man, I'm glad you said that, because initially we got into this simply because we wanted people to have an affordable place to live. Mm-hmm. And we met somebody that introduced us to somebody that introduced us to Mike Peel. And just to keep it short, man, this has been life-changing for me. And I'm speaking personally. I'm sure for my wife too, but if you would have asked me this 6 months ago, I would have told you, no, I'm not sustaining nothing. I'm not doing that, not doing it. And when we got into this group, we gave them our idea, and they really opened our eyes to the possibilities, to what, not only what we could do, but they opened our eyes to some of the effects our project was going to have without us even knowing. And so that kind of kept us on that track of, okay, well, we can do that. All right, yeah, let's do that. And you heard my wife talk about BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, people of color, and sustainability and equality for those things. And to understand the heat island effect and how it affects their bills, how it affects our health with eating right, how we can make money from the land that's there. All those things were just amazing as we continue to grow this project. You good? All right.
Well, do you want to add something, Randy? Yeah, sorry.
Mm-mm.
Okay.
Good.
Thomas and I were coming together before we opened up the networking yesterday, and he said, how did you enjoy day 2? And I said, I only had a chance to listen to a couple of folks speak, but what I was left with is this this mind game that I play with myself, that it's not my problem. And I'll cop to that as a small business owner, and more recently, a single parent, and COVID and just life, and trying to figure out, how to get through the day. All the topics we've talked about for these 3 days, sometimes I convince myself that it's not my problem, and that's BS, right? And so I would love for you to speak to each of us about maybe a call to action or some sort of encouragement, if you haven't already been encouraging, which you clearly have. But could you speak to the person like me who says, I just got to make the bills, I got to pay the bills. But so what is the encouragement, a little piece of advice that you have for us, and or a call to action?
And for the call to action that I have is that each one teach one, each one reach one. It just takes one of us, just like Herman said, that one pebble will make the ripples. Another thing is that we encourage people to support Black businesses, that we don't traditionally, because of the wealth gap, we don't typically have that capital in order to, we're just going to build a new house today. We're going to get plumbing done. Permits are like thousands of dollars, and we didn't know that. And this is what we're doing. And Herman is literally going to work, and we're splitting our household income. Like you said, you're a single parent. And so he's putting half in the business and half to pay for our own housing. So just support businesses, people of color in particular, because that capital is not naturally there. You have anything else?
The main reason behind it is because we're so connected to all these different communities. And like we talked about, the misconceptions of people think it's useless or worthless. We have a place where we can bring them and teach them and show them that, no, not only is this not worthless, it's beneficial. It's almost imperative that we do it. And so, it's really important that, when you have a business such as ours that can reach those people that normally wouldn't pay it any attention. And I am a personal example of that. I think it's important that, we have that support so that we can go out there and continue to do what we do and build it up, because it'll just make it better, not only for us, but for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think Pat and I will firmly stand with the Black-owned businesses and the support to them. We've become somewhat enlightened. We're becoming more enlightened every day on the idea of representation, and equal representation hasn't been there for all communities in America. And we believe that it'd be impossible to have a sustainable future if everyone doesn't have representation. And we encourage supporting Black-owned businesses greatly from our angle personally and at Arizona Wilderness. We also have a gap in our own restaurant. We're a majority white restaurant, and we would love to spread this wealth and knowledge and power amongst everybody. So, there is a lot to talk about, but the call to action is to open your eyes and understand that we're merely vessels for whatever soul's inside of us. And we all have to own our energy. I can't encourage people enough to own their own energy. When you own your own energy, you're going to learn quickly that the balance is everything around you. And we're trying to take care of our corner at Wilderness. One of the things I'll tell you that we don't want to do is grow too much. Pat and I have a lot of what we call governance meetings, like, you know, the engine that you're going 110 and you want to go 120, but it stops you. We kind of put that on ourselves, because we know the negative side effects of over distribution, reaching out of your means, just the high cost of Earth. You're taking Earth's precious resources and you're moving the needle in a way that, you know, it's impossible to go back in time, and we're gonna witness a lot more if we don't take care of our own corners. So know your own energy, get to know you, get inside you, not what you look like on the outside, but who you are on the inside, and then find out your counterbalance, and that counterbalance is other energy. And that's the big thing, that why Pat and I don't pull our hair out every day, because this thing ain't fun. And I'm not speaking like, I'm not being negative and saying don't get into business. It's not that fun. You're not going to wake up every day and go, yay, but you'll learn what joy is. You'll learn what excitement is. You'll learn that the ebbs and flows are always going to be there. And that's about knowing who you are. I don't think you should be an owner of a business if you have struggles with who you are, your identity, why you're in it. I think you should figure that out first. And you know, again, I reference my wife, but she's my balance here at home. Your home life as a CEO or whatever you are in your company is everything. Oh, it's everything. You know, you go home and you know who your balance is and your home life is, and that shelter that you've created is. And I just encourage people to understand that not everyone has access to that. The type of home that we have, especially, I grew up in a white household. I never asked for anything, and my parents were low income. They weren't poor, and they never struggled to get loans. Just understand that there's not we can't have a sustainable future if everyone doesn't have equal representation. So we stand with that, and we appreciate the sentiment of that moving forward.
Yeah, thank you, man. We appreciate that.
Add anything to add?
I just want to add from a customer perspective, and some of the messaging that I think we should all have is for people to be curious. Just be curious about where they're putting their money, and to ask the right questions. I think that's really what we're trying to do, is educate and allow people to ask those questions rather than just kind of blindly going about. The modern marketing and advertising is algorithm based, and it's very, very powerful. So we need to understand as a species what's happening to us, and maybe question our daily behaviors and our practices, and understand psychologically also what's happening. We've evolved, but not fast enough. We're infants when it comes to what's going on in the technology sector. So generally what my approach is, and John and I believe in, is trying to bring ourselves back to a more ancient state. I mean, ultimately, what would fix all of our problems if we just rolled back time 500 years, with some of the knowledge that we have now? So maybe take your shoes off and walk around barefoot, try to feel that energy,
Oh, for sure. I've spent a lot of time up at Sedona Mago Retreat in Sedona, and they teach us how to walk barefooted on this gravel. I also just got done reading a book called The Wild Edge of Sorrow, and talking about grief and how, years ago when there were tribes and smaller communities, how important grief and sorrow was, not only on behalf of our earth, but our community and individuals. And we've lost so much of that. So it has been a true honor and a pleasure. I see Thomas smiling. I felt him smiling the whole time, even though he's in a different room here at Mac 6. Thank you so much. I would be remiss if I didn't very quickly ask each of you to tell us how we stay in touch and how do we get involved. Rendicia and Herman, why don't you start for us?
Well, you can email us through our website at www.harrisfletcher.com. You can also follow us on Instagram at Urban Forest by HF. And you can also follow us through my art website, in which all of the artwork that I make and sell benefits the Urban Forest Project. And that's at Living 2 Portraits on Instagram, LIVNG, the number 2 and portraits. And you can also just purchase art, like we said, because all the proceeds benefit what we're doing here.
And Deja, we would really like to sell some of your art at our downtown location. We have a spot for local artists, and we'd love to be part of that.
Absolutely.
And to find us, azwbeer.com. And we have a social media, azwbeer. And we are very proud of our social media. We try to represent who we are as a company, but we try to represent our community, and we're getting better at that, as I've talked about. The best, I think Instagram's the best way to connect. We definitely want to share these two, because one thing I noticed about Randy is she's in the ground planting, and again, that's my type of people right there. I really like that, and we want to be that as well. You'll see us at farm visits, you'll see us planting, you'll see us touching the food that, even seeing our cattle, or the spinach that we're going to put on. We're not, everything's local in our menu, but we hope that our Instagram and our social media can be a presence that you can follow like a novel. So check us out on those locations, and we'll share the story when we go visit these two and see this this project that they're on, that's growing trees with food on it. What a magical thing that Earth's provided.
So awesome.
I'll be on the
awesome.
corner of Ray and I-10 with my thumb out. Thumb away. I would love to
Pick
do
you
it.
up.
Well, yeah, we'll take it down.
Come on.
I could not have been happier to close out our summit with such an incredible group of people. I'm so grateful. We're all so grateful from Local First for everything you bring to the community, to Arizona, for the issues you're addressing, to the challenges that you are facing and provide solutions for. Thank you, each and every one of you, for being here today and participating in the summit. It is our privilege to have you here and part of our ecosystem in Arizona. Thank you so much for all that you do.
Yes, thank you for having us. We
Thank you.
much appreciate it.
Thank you, Local
Absolutely.
First. Thank you very much for allowing a platform to speak.
Absolutely.